Welcome, listeners. You are tuning in to Unlocking Your Truth with Dr. Leslie and Corey.
That's me. Hello, everybody.
Unlocking Your Truth is a talk show about metaphysics and spirituality. We broadcast every Tuesday from 7 to 8 Pacific time on CIVL from the unceded territory of the Stolo Nation on 101.7 FM across the Fraser Valley. We also live stream to our Awaken Your Psychic Abilities Facebook group and my Dr. Leslie Phillips YouTube channel.
Ooh.
And you can catch our hundreds of previous podcast episodes on my website, drlesliephillips.com. We've done 250 episodes of the show now, and we've covered everything under the sun in the realm of metaphysics. And tonight's show, we always like to ask our listeners to make suggestions for what we should talk about. And so that's what we're going to do tonight. One of our listeners suggested that we talk about the subject of death and reconnecting with our loved ones and what happens when we die. So what she asked was, do we reconnect with our loved ones from current and past lives when we pass? So I thought what we could do, that's almost like 3 or 4 subjects in one, in a way, because we've got death, what happens when we pass on, our connectedness or interconnectedness with other people, and then past lives.
Yes. I love past lives.
Yeah, I'm going to pass it out into those sort of general themes. And then towards the end of the show, we'll have it all out there.
Well, I was just looking for images for this podcast and trying to figure out what image would involve past life, death, and spirit world, right? And there's not really a lot, but the one I came up with is actually an ancestral picture, like of back in the 1900s somewhere, where like a mining camp in sepia color, and it looks very interesting when you think about it. It really does. Past lives and ancestors and spirit and reconnecting really does it all works together quite nicely. Well, it's all related quite nicely.
Okay, so death. What happens when we die? Let's answer that question.
Everybody cries.
Ultimately, when we die, we return to source. And what is source? Well, that's kind of my word for the great all that is, supreme being. Some people call it God. Basically, it's the energy of everything and the source from where we all came. So when we die, ultimately we reconnect with that larger energy. We reconnect with our own larger energy, the energy of our soul. So that's maybe an overarching truth or piece of information about what happens to all of us. But that journey from life to death is uniquely individual. I mean, basically what is happening is that you're going through a transition from the plane of physical reality, which is a lower vibrational frequency, through higher and higher frequency bands in this, let's call it return to source or return to your source. Now, how that journey happens and what you encounter along the way really depends on you, and it depends on what you believed while you were alive. And it also depends on your state of awareness when you die. So you've all heard of the law of attraction. You create your reality. But how do you create your reality? You create your reality through projections of your own consciousness. So projections of consciousness might be another way of saying the thoughts that you're emitting, the emotions that you're emitting, the visualizations that you are emitting. Okay. So let's just call that projections of consciousness. You continue to create your reality through projections of consciousness when you pass over. So let's say, and this is where it gets unique and individual. So let's say you're religious, and let's say you're staunchly Catholic, or any of the other Christian religions that believes in heaven and hell. And let's say you believe that you were bad while you were alive, and therefore you're going to end up in hell. You may very well end up in the experience of your personal projection of hell when you pass over. It's not real, it's illusory, it's a projection of your own consciousness, and it's happening because that is what you believed would happen. If you are a member of the same faith, but you believe that you're really good and you're going to go to heaven, then that's the experience you'll get. You'll get your personal projection of heaven. In either case, it's an illusion. It's a projection of your consciousness. Just like this life is a projection of your consciousness, even though it seems really real to you, you're creating it. And so there's this stage where many souls end up in this projected version of reality, which is what they're believing will happen when they die. And, you know, it might be quite a nice experience, and they may spend some time there just and time is the wrong word to use, by the way, but we have to explain it in our linear terms. You know, eventually they will be assisted to move beyond that level of illusion and to transition beyond those ideas which are projections of their own consciousness. So whatever you believe is going to happen when you die, that's the experience you'll get reflected back at you. So if you believe in nothingness, if you believe that's the end of it, then that may indeed be what you experience until you realize your consciousness is still there and the nothingness with you.
But don't most people at the end of their life, when they're laying, if it's not a sudden death, if they're laying in their, in their deathbed, a lot of people change their opinions, they change their belief system around death. So, they pray for forgiveness. Somebody who's not religious whatsoever will pray for forgiveness. They'll want to make these alterations because all of a sudden the reality is death is right there and they're facing it, and the uncertainty happens. What happens to a person who has a belief system that says there is no heaven, no hell, no death, and then the last second changes that belief system?
Well, I would say it's just the predominant vibration that they're in at the point at which they pass over. And actually, that's a really interesting point, because if you are awake and aware and grounded at the point of death, if you're grounded when you die, you can actually skip that step that I've just been talking about of being lost in the realm of illusion and go straight to the higher realms of reality and go straight to source energy. So it's the difference between taking an elevator ride to the ultimate destination versus taking a detour in either something that's like a nice little holiday vacation or a nightmare vacation. So, those beings who have developed their consciousness may not necessarily go through that stage, okay, because they have a certainty about the path back to source, and so that's where they go. And actually I did one of my Akashic Adventure workshops on the life after death state. And we did this exercise that I do with people called the 7 heavens exercise. And what you do in that 7 heavens exercise is you basically visit the last 7 heavens you created. So the last 7 times that you passed over, where did you go when you died? What did that look like? And then the idea is that you present time them and let them go, so you don't recreate them again, and so you don't operate from those beliefs again. And so that's a really cool thing to do. And for anyone that's interested, that's in my Dr. Leslie Phillips /workshops. But Corey can put the link in under the podcast. So that's what happens when we die. That's only addressed part of the question. So we're starting to paint a picture to answer the question, which is, do we reconnect with our loved ones from current and past lives when we pass? The short answer to that is yes, but what I'm trying to do is give you a more informed answer. So let's talk about the others that we're connected to. So ultimately, we are one. Ultimately, we are all part of God. We are all aspects of source energy. So any idea of separation is an illusion. You can never be separated from anyone or anything. Everything is interconnected. But on Earth, we've created the illusion of separation. And we did this on purpose as a group of beings choosing to incarnate on this planet, so that we could have the experience of our uniqueness and our individuality, and so that we could have a point of focus for our creative expression in the material realm through the physical body, and embed ourselves in time and space so that we have the results of our actions, our projections of consciousness mirrored back, okay? Because we create, then there's time and space, and then the results of what we've thought, said, or done are reflected back at us. So in this earthly capacity, we experience our loved ones as separate beings, even though ultimately they're not, because we're all part of the same one source and can never be separated. But when somebody dies, we go through this illusion that we've lost them. We haven't lost them. And there is a higher part of our being and a higher part of their being that are always connected. But when they pass over, when you're in your human form, your human state, you feel like you've lost them because their body is no longer there, their body disintegrates, and your body can no longer experience their body. And so there's a kind of emotional grieving that the body goes through. And then there's a living out the rest of the lifetime, feeling like that person isn't there anymore. But ultimately, your relationship with that person is intact at the soul level, at the higher level of who you are. You are connected. So hopefully I'm making sense on that. So let's sort of transition into talking about the other part of the question, which is current lives and past lives.
Hey. Hey, Dr. Leslie, just a quick, what was it that you want me to put on there? I can't seem to find what you were talking about.
I should post it in the chat box for you to find.
Okay. Yeah, past lives, I find that's the best, the greatest reading people do. That they love your past life readings.
Yeah. So let's go on to talk about the question, which was, well, when we die, do we really reconnect with our loved ones? And the answer is, as I've been saying, well, you never, in truth, never disconnected from them. You just had the illusion of being disconnected from them. And so But I mean, I guess from where the question was asked from, the answer is yes. So we're always connected with all creation. And one of the interesting things is that some souls, in a way, and maybe I'm not completely accurate saying this, might be more or less connected with you. And another way of talking about that is to say they belong to your soul group. So we often incarnate and reincarnate as a group. So you may have certain other souls in your soul group that you've traveled together with lifetime after lifetime. And so you're going on this journey together from the non-physical into the physical for another adventure, and out we go again, and then back into the physical for another adventure. You know, this time I'll be the mother, you be the child. No, let's let's change it round. This time I'll be the father and you be the child, and so on and so on. And you know, we do this, and in doing this, our soul group members can be a loving, supportive influence, or maybe they even show up as our worst enemy. And from the soul's perspective, it's all about growth and expansion and having more and more experience. And so it's fantastic if a member of your soul group shows up, agrees to be your enemy, because then through that difficult relationship, you will grow more and more. And same things with anyone who's close to you, right? There are always things that you're going through together. And so you're supporting the expansion of one another by journeying together in the physical incarnations. So you meet your soul group again and again across many lives. And sometimes there are things that you're needing, imbalances in your relationship that you're needing to figure out. So one word for that might be karma, you know, and so you're coming back again and again in order to try and rebalance the karma. So I had another question that somebody posted that relates to this, and it's from Zena, who said, are there animals in heaven?
Which is a great topic for after the break.
Okay. So listeners, you've been tuning in to Unlocking Your Truth. We're going to take a break.
A short pause. And you can go ahead again, Dr. Leslie.
Welcome back, listeners. You're tuning in to Unlocking Your Truth with Dr. Leslie and Corey.
With me.
And this is a talk show about metaphysics and spirituality. And tonight's topic that we're talking about is, do we reconnect with our loved ones from current and past lives when we pass?
Do we have to?
And
Some people are saying that, I'm sure. Do we have to reconnect with them?
We had a follow-on question, which was, are there animals in heaven? And the short answer to that is yes. And the slightly longer answer, which relates to what I've been saying, is animals are expression of source consciousness as well. You know, there may be a different group of beings that have chosen to express themselves through a certain animal form, but they are still, you know, aspects of source energy, and as we are connected to all things, then we're always connected to them. And in fact, we were talking about soul groups and incarnating again with the same people. You will often, in the animals that you have as pets, when you lose an animal, the next animal you get may very well be a reincarnation of the one that passed away. So in answering this question overall, do we reconnect with our loved ones from current and past lives when we pass? It made me think about, sometimes in my work, and people come and they've had the experience of somebody passing away. you know, and they're very upset. And they always want to know, is he all right or is she all right? Or when it's their animal, is the animal all right? Are they okay now? Because they've seen that person or they've seen that animal suffering before it died. And of course, the answer is always yes. They're absolutely fine, because you know, we're the ones that are still in the realm of light and dark, happiness and sadness, grief and pain and love. You know, we're the one in the duality of planet Earth. So the ones who suffer when somebody passes away, after the person has passed away, is not that person who's passed away. You know, it's the people who are left behind. So whenever somebody comes and asks me that, well, the answer is always yes. But then sometimes I can look at that more deeply, and you know, we see sometimes people are let's see, we were talking earlier about how you know, how you can get caught kind of in the lower middle astral plane in your own projections of consciousness about what happens when you die. But once you get beyond that phase, then you're in a higher realm of consciousness where you actually can enjoy kind of doing what you love. So let's say you love music. So maybe you hang out in the celestial choirs for a while. Or let's say you love learning. Maybe you're in one, you know, a library of knowledge for a while. Maybe you like traveling around the universe, looking at other planets, you know, you name it. Or maybe you're in preparation for your next lifetime. And so, you know, sometimes when people ask, is so-and-so okay? Well, the answer is yes, that they are okay. Sometimes we get information about what they're doing. Well, they're preparing for their next life, or well, they're still working through some things that they didn't completely work through in the lifetime that they just left. Or well, they've already, you know, I see there's already another body on the planet that comes from that same soul. So, you know, in answer to that question, is so-and-so who's just passed away okay? Then there are different answers that can come forward from that. What else can we say? Do we reconnect with our loved ones from you know, so current and past lives. So we could talk a little bit more about current and past lives. Because again, in our human form, it's linear, right? There's past, present, future. Outside of the earth plane, there's no past, present, or future. So spirit doesn't exist. Spirit exists outside of time and space. So from the soul's perspective, all of the lifetimes are unique projections of consciousness. And when we're talking about lifetimes on Earth, into that matrix of reality called planet Earth. And so from the soul's perspective, it's not happening in a linear fashion. Well, I had this lifetime in ancient Egypt, and then I went to ancient Rome, and then I went to ancient Greece, and then I don't know, I was in the Victorian England. We think of it that way. From the soul's perspective, those projections of consciousness are happening simultaneously and are all interconnected. My favorite analogy for actually describing that is if you can imagine one of those disco balls, those roller disco balls, those disco balls from the 1970s, and there's light, the light is bouncing off the mirrors in the disco ball. And all of those many lights are bouncing off the disco ball simultaneously. And then there's these little spots on the floor, traveling around the floor. So if you're in the perspective of the soul, the disco ball, There's all of those projections of consciousness simultaneously, and there's the view of all of the spots on the floor, all of the lifetimes. If you're in the perspective of the lifetime, you're in one spot on the floor, right? Moving around, and you can see there's a spot in front of you, and you can look back and see there's a spot behind you, and they seem to be separate from you, and they seem to be happening at different times, and they seem to be happening in a linear fashion, but actually they're not. And then the same thing goes for our interrelated relationship with each other. We are all part of the one source. We are all part of these soul groups. And we're simultaneously in that experience of connectedness and disconnectedness, depending on the perspective. The perspective is in a single lifetime, and somebody passes away, you think you've lost that person. If the perspective is from the soul, same as it ever was. you know, you're still there. You're still in that connectedness.
Yeah. The interesting thing about that is in the past life work that I've done, I've met my soul groups, my soul group, and the people in my soul group, and I recognized every one of them that was there, but they didn't look at all like people that I knew. But I could tell their energy. Their energy was there. I could tell who was who in this life, and it was a pictorial It was a representation of them. They took on physical form, but it wasn't. It was only to make it. How do I put it? Make it comfortable for me at that time.
Yeah.
And so when I looked at them, I could see who was who was what, and there was no emotion attached to it. There was no, oh, like anger, upset, uh, love, hate. There was none of that. Like if one person was playing my enemy in this life, well, they were playing the enemy. That was their role. It was very interesting. It clarifies exactly your interrelationship with these soul groups as you work through.
And exactly right. Each soul has its own unique vibration, its own unique essence. And I'm teaching a group of students at the moment to do past life readings. And that's one of the things we're going to look at next week, is because sometimes people will come and they'll say, I want to know who my family members were to me in a past life. Or, and so how do you recognize that person when you're looking at the past life? And it's by the unique energy signature, because they might be a white lady in this lifetime, and they could have been a black man or a Chinese woman or anything under the sun. They could have lived on any continent, believed in, completely different belief system. And so, it makes me laugh that sometimes I see on the internet these websites that they've got famous people, and then they've got a famous person from the past, and then they say, this person was this person, and they put the photographs side by side and they look like each other. And so they say, this is evidence of the reincarnation of this person into that person. Well, you could look completely different in a past life. You could look like so different in a past life, but what's the same is the unique energy, the essence that animates the body, not the body and what it looks like. All right, well, I think it's a really great time to ask our listeners if they have got questions, either about tonight's topic, which was, do we reconnect with our loved ones from current and past lives when we pass? Or we could just open it up to what you want to know about psychic development.
I have a question.
Yeah, what's your question?
Well, I've done both. Like you did a past life reading for me, of course, and I've had past life done before. And the one I've had done before, somebody put me under hypnosis, in essence, right? and to do past life regression. And I went in and I looked and I scanned and I did all the work in that. Whereas you actually do the opposite. You go in and pull 3 lives for somebody and look at them and then interrelate how it's that past life is affecting or how it's pertinent to their current journey on this planet.
Yeah.
What do you feel the differences between those two? Good, bad, indifferent?
So, if you're hypnotized and you get past life therapy through hypnosis, then you have that direct internal experience. Not everyone is open to being hypnotized. Some people resist it or wouldn't want to be hypnotized. So for those people, they wouldn't go that route to experience their past lives. The other thing is, it may take longer, depending on the person, to get them into that state where they are able to access the information. And then the third thing is, even if they see it with their own eyes, they may doubt it with their own intellect. So when I do a past life reading, I've been doing it for so long, it's quicker. I can read 3 past lives in half an hour and get straight to the point, the important point, without wandering around in irrelevant information. Because my purpose in the work that I do is to help people evolve and progress, to help them awaken. And so the way I like to focus my past life readings is on exactly that. We bring forward past lives that specifically relate to the current life and to the point in time and the exact experience and growth cycle that you are in right now in the current life. Because then you can understand where you're at from a broader perspective, and it will help you to move forward from that point. Sometimes I get people, and that's not what they want. They want to know, who was my husband, my daughter, my mother, who were they in my past lives? Or they've had a memory or a dream that they think is a past life, and they want validation that was a past life. Which is it's something I can do, but I always find that it is more enriching for the person if the focus is on their evolvement. Oh, I see Christine made a comment. Don't know whether you can see that, Corey.
Yes, I can. I had a question from YouTube as well.
Mm.
Why don't we, what time is it now? 32. Let's take a look at Christine's comment very quickly. I prefer having you read versus hypnosis because I don't believe what's coming out of my mouth. But when you say it, it rings true and feels more real.
Yeah, a good reader will bring forward past lives that really resonate with you, and it will just feel right.
Yeah.
It will feel right to you.
Yeah. It's. I know that when I did the self hypnosis, I have done a lot of meditation and a lot of self hypnosis as well, and I found that I enjoyed it. It was a whole different series of things. It was just, it really affected me. When you do it, it did as well, and I enjoyed it. It was nice to just take the ride as opposed to have to do the work.
Well, yes, because if you're receiving a past life reading, you're receiving.
Mm-hmm.
You're just receiving. You just have to sit, listen, and receive the information and the transformation.
Yeah, very true. And I have something I'd like to touch on after the break, but what we'll do is we're going to go to a break, and then when you come back, there's a question from Curious Soul, and the question is, can they come from another planet? Someone on the internet is doing some sort of regression, and the subject is in trance and is talking about being a reptilian type or an entity who has a mission here. So
Okay.
when we come back from the break, you can answer that question.
Sure. Listeners, you've been listening to Unlocking Your Truth with Dr. Leslie and Corey, and we'll be back after this break.
And we're back.
Welcome back, listeners. This is Dr. Leslie on Unlocking Your Truth with Dr. Leslie, and also with me I have Corey.
That's nice.
Tonight's show, we're talking about kind of a combo subject. Somebody asked us, do we reconnect with our loved ones from current and past lives when we pass? So we've been talking about death. We've been talking about how we're all interconnected. And now we went on to current and past lives. And now we're going to go on to intergalactic lifetimes.
You need me to reread the question for you?
Read the question again.
Can they come from another planet? Someone on the internet is doing some sort of regression, and the subject is in trance and is talking about being a reptilian type of an entity who has an entity who has a mission here.
Okay. So I'm going to answer this in a way that fits in with what we've already talked about. You are a multi-dimensional being. You are a multi-dimensional eternal being who creates in many realities. The earth plane is one reality that you create in. It is not the only reality that you create in. So just as we were talking about, there are projections of your consciousness here on earth into this lifetime and the past lifetimes and the future lifetimes and the parallel lifetimes, there are other projections of your consciousness on other planets. And maybe, aspects of let's see. So you can have connections between those aspects of yourself. So is it possible for, I'm trying to, there's two answers I want to give to the next bit. Can you read the question again?
Yes, I can. The question is, can they come, talk about readings, can they come from another planet? Can the past life come from another planet? Someone on the internet is doing some sort of regression, and the subject's in trance and is talking about being a reptilian type of entity who has a mission here.
Okay, so we already answered the first part, which is, yeah, you have lifetimes on other planets. Second part, could you in trance channel information from one of your other lifetimes that's from another planet? Yes. Okay. Are there instances where there is an aspect of consciousness that is identifying with another planet that has a mission to connect with an aspect of consciousness here on Earth? Yes. Can that sometimes be another aspect of your own consciousness? Yes. Can that sometimes be another consciousness that's from another soul? Yes. So I would say these things are not super common, but possible. And so I don't know who you're talking about. It makes me think about, there's a guy called the ET Whisperer who's got these reptilian beings who he channels they give useful information. But let me give you some examples. For example, you've probably heard of Esther Hicks, who channels Abraham. That's another aspect of her own consciousness. Or she's not an example of an alien, though. Bashar, channeled by Daryl Anker. Bashar is a member of the Essassani, which is part, which is an alien race, and also part of the same ultimate consciousness as Darryl Anka, and he's channeling this alien consciousness as a way, and that consciousness, who's called Bashar, his role is first contact, meaning for that race of extraterrestrial beings making contact with newly awakening planets. So the answer to I've waffled around a bit, curious soul, but the short answer to your question is, yeah, it's possible.
Yeah. So if you know, it just got me thinking, like walk-ins and things like that. Like when somebody is passing away, somebody just walks into that body and keeps going with it. If you were reading a walk-in or something along those lines, would you be able to A, tell if they were a walk-in, and B, would you pick up past lives from that type of, you know, from their other existence?
That's a good question. And I'll answer it, and I'll just say, I noticed that Bridie's put a comment about a past life.
Yes.
So very good question. Could I tell that they were a walk-in? I could. And so here's the thing about walk-ins. The soul that originally creates the body, the vessel, is on the hook for the actions of that vessel for the whole of the lifetime of that vessel or body. Okay, so you create a body and you decide to exit partway through the lifetime of that body. You are still responsible for what is done through that body. So that's one of the, I guess, interesting aspects of walk-ins, right? So a walk-in is another consciousness that basically rents the body because a soul is finished with their body for whatever reason, and the walk-in comes in and takes over that body. So people, when they've had accidents, you know, will come back and, you know, claim to be a walk-in, that they're not the same soul inhabiting that body than before the accident. Give me a second. I was going to say something. It's gone out my mind. Well, whatever it is, it's gone out my mind. But yeah, I mean, so I can tell if it's a walk-in because of the energy signature. You've got the energy signature of the being that created the body, and you've got the energy signature of the being that didn't create the body but's inhabiting the body. So they're different. And sometimes you have almost like a braided consciousness where you've got the two coexisting. And sometimes what the walk-in is a different aspect of the same consciousness as opposed to a different consciousness. So there's different things that can happen with a walk-in. And what would happen if I did a past life reading for a walk-in? And that's an excellent question. I've met a few walk-ins, and they seem to, because they're in the body of the person that left, that body's still got memories in its brain of the lifetime that it's lived. So they're walking into a body that's actually got a history, and that's got memories, and that's got the results of whatever that person did in the body are there. So, you know, and that's like the health of the body, the mental state of the body, the emotional state of the body, the energies that have been deposited in the body. If there's, you know, pain or illness or whatever it is, that's the package, that's the vessel. So they come into that body, and then they're dealing with memories that are there that somehow aren't their own memories, except they are there in the body. Now, what would that mean in terms of past lifetimes? I'm going to just, I've never been asked that before, so I'm just going to go and take a look at that. If the walk-in came to me for a past life reading, the walk-in would get the past lives of that soul that was the walk-in, because that's the one who's coming and asking for the information. They wouldn't get the past lives of the soul that had vacated unless they asked for information about that. So the past life reading would always be relating to the consciousness that's asking for it. That's my answer.
And you're sticking to it?
I'm sticking to it, yeah.
Okay. So yes, Bridie, she made a comment. She said, I had a past life reading with you a few months back. Last few days, past life energy has really surfaced in my consciousness again, and I feel like I'm entering a time of energy release and shifting strongly again. A lot of physical purging with this. Is there anything relevant for me to hear with this in this moment that you can pick up? If not, all good in content and surrendering and dropping in with the process.
Well, oddly enough, one of the things that I've found lately with many of the people who come is it's almost like their past life timelines collapsing. And what do I mean by that? It's like we're coming full circle. You know, we've been on a collective journey on planet Earth, and we've reached a turning point in our collective journey. And so everything that's happened and all the lifetimes that have happened up to now have been getting us to this point. Beyond this point, we're going places we've never been before. And so people are kind of finishing off the cycle, the sort of larger karmic cycle. So the first piece of information that I got, Bridie, was that that's one of the things that's happening within you. But I am seeing that there is a sort of a juncture on your past life timeline that I'm not sure if it's stuck, but it looks a bit stuck. It looks and so I'm going to just checking how much time we've got here. The symbol that you're showing me that represents this tract of time, it reminds me of a blacksmith's anvil. It's like it's really heavy energy, leaden energy, and what I'm seeing, I mean, it's more than one past life, but I'm seeing a battle. And it just looks like you're being called to let go of things where you've been stuck in righteousness or right and wrong, being on the you know, one side being right and the other side being wrong. So you're being called to move into a space of forgiveness and acceptance and let go of the battle and let go of the fight. And it just looks like there's a few sticking points that are showing up. That, you know, because sometimes we say from our human perspective, well, how can I be neutral about that? Surely that person was bad and wrong and deserves to be punished for what they did. And that's human. And from the soul's perspective, it was another adventure and another experience that maybe the soul learned from and won't create again. But calling something, you know, wrong or bad, that's human. So I'm just seeing what's coming up is that there's just some past life aspects that you're working on releasing that have to do with one side being right and the other side being wrong. And again, I would just draw that full circle back to the cycle that we're on the planet. You know, we've got in front of our faces all the time, this group's right and that group's wrong, whether it's politics that you're looking at or anything else. And one of the things that we're being called to do is move beyond that level of separation where we all have to, you know, where one group's right and we all have to adhere to that, you know, and if you're not this, then you're wrong, and move into just accepting the uniqueness of all beings and allowing them to freely to express themselves with that unique spark of divine energy that they are, as opposed to needing them to comply with a certain set of rules. So I hope that helps.
We have one more that you can cover. We've got 2 minutes left. So can someone ask you about a past life of someone else? Are the past lives and memories private, of locked to a specific soul? Are the memories stored in the body? I assume that they are stored in the soul.
Yeah, and interestingly enough, the DNA. So yeah, people can ask me about past lives of other people. I don't know that anyone has ever asked me for a past life, because always, if you're asking for a past life of someone else, it's always someone you've got a relationship with. And so the past life that comes up involves you as well, right? And so I don't think nobody would ever ask about a past life that wasn't somebody that they were connected with in some way, even if it was a famous person that they never met. You know, there's always a connection. And so there's always your personal piece of that past life that you're asking for, if that makes sense. But if somebody's having a past life reading, I'm reading it from the context of them and their soul record, but we can pull in, you know, who was my father, who was my husband, who was my son, and all of that.
Interesting. I didn't think that was possible. I didn't think that you could actually read somebody else's past life while reading somebody else. So I guess.
Well, because I'm delivering the information at the level that the person who's receiving the reading requires it.
Yeah.
But that's all part of the Akashic record. Everything that ever was, that's ever been thought, said, done, that's all part of the Akashic record.
So Brady says yes in capitals. Thank you, and you're welcome. And that's basically the show, Dr. Leslie. Quick sign off, and we're gone.
Thank you, everyone, for tuning in this evening to Unlocking Your Truth. We're here every Tuesday from 7 to 8 Pacific time. See you next week.
See you next week, folks. Bye-bye.
Bye.